Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to What's on the Playlist today. I realize I wear them all the time, but today's artist wears a lot of Hawaiian shirts as well. So this is appropriate attire. Today I want to talk about Weird Al Yankovic, his debut album, also titled Weird Al Yankovic, an image of which you will see here. Ooh. Um, this is one of those things like I was thinking about what to do for my next one, and I came up with like 4 or 5 artists and albums. Like, why haven't I done these yet? These have been in my collection for over 30 years. Why haven't I talked about this artist yet? Weird Al was the first one I'm choosing to do that for. So, for those of you who don't know, Weird Al is a parody novelty. He's a novelty artist. He writes parodies of other songs, of other musical styles, and just novelty songs on his own. He got his start in architecture school. He Weird Al is actually if anyone who's a fan of Weird Al Yankovic, most of this stuff is not going to be new. But as I know him better than a lot of other artists, I have a lot more to say. Weird Al is a certifiable genius. He actually graduated high school early, started college at the age of 17, and was studying to be an architect. He actually has a degree in architecture. He's graduated college and got his degree. He could be an architect if he wanted to be. He was actually working at his college radio station when My Sharona by the Knack was very popular. He played a lot of novelty songs when, as a DJ, he recorded My Bologna, a parody of My Sharona, in like the school bathroom with a friend of his beating on his accordion case for the percussion. That was popular. I actually heard some of his original parody songs before he had a record contract on my local radio station, which I've spoken of in the past, was populated by a bunch of stoners, and they played whatever the hell they wanted to. So he put out a parody, another one, Rides the Bus, a parody of another one, Bites the Dust by Queen. Somewhat less known fact, the B-side of the single My Bologna was called School Cafeteria. I don't think it has not appeared on any of his regular albums. It might be on some of his collections. I don't have any collections of Weird Al since I have all his albums. But that's an obscure B-side that never made it to a full album. I actually kind of like it. I'm ashamed it didn't, but anywho. Someone heard a parody of one of his songs. I'm not sure which one. Because he wrote other parodies, so not just those two. But those are the two that he's originally best known for. I think it was I Love Rock and Roll was the parody that he'd written. And the person who wrote the song actually heard it, loved it, and contacted a friend of his to get Weird Al into the studio. They got into the studio. He recorded like nine of the songs on the album, recorded the rest on another day. But like that, his producer was Rick Derringer, who was a singer-songwriter who also happened to know, but help other artists out and like to produce. So he basically got him into the studio without having a record contract. Just, I got to record, we want to record this stuff. And they finally got someone to do a record contract after I Love Rocky Road was slipped to a California radio station. The guy who, the record station manager, loved it, put it on the airwaves, and it was the top requested song the very next day of that radio station. So that got him a record contract. I think it's Scotty Brothers. Yeah, Scotty Brothers produced him. But Weird Al was saying he'd go to studios to try and get a record label to produce his album, and they were like, "Oh, you write novelty songs, you'll maybe get one hit out of it, and you'll fade into obscurity, and no one will ever hear from you again." And that's the kind of career Weird Al expected. He's like, "Yeah, novelty acts don't last that long for the most part." Now, given that he's been recording and touring for the last 45 years or so. Has it been that long? Not 45. This came out in 1983. So, and they only did like 11 shows, like 11 different cities for the, like to promote the album. So not a major tour. And, but yeah, he's just had this, he managed to endure. He's endured longer than most of the artists that he's parodied. That's as the saying goes. The song contains, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parody songs, and the rest are all originals that Weird Al wrote himself. A lot of people have said that this is Weird Al's weakest album. I'm not sure I agree. It's probably at least polished, because of course, the band was just starting out. Weird Al was just starting out. But it's got some solid hits on here. So, I mean, I Love Rocky Road, Ricky, and My Bologna, Another One Rides the Bus. I mean, some of these got radio play. There's actually a video for Ricky. I don't remember if any of the other ones got videos for them. But this is also the only one of Weird Al's albums that the accordion appears in every single song, which I didn't realize. I mean, he's known for playing the accordion, but I guess, in subsequent albums, he used it when he felt it was necessary, and when he felt it didn't match the song, he just wouldn't have the accordion in it. But Weird Al's signature accordion is in every single track on this album, and this is the only album that's the case for. That was something interesting I found out when searching for this album. Well, researching this album, my little, few minutes reading on the internet. Is there anything? No good liner notes in this one. Thought there might be. I remember reading something about this. Actually, one of my favorite Weird Al songs is on this album. I'll Be Mellow When I'm Dead, which is kind of a bit perhaps ironic, since I am normally a very mellow guy. So my usual comment is, if I get any more mellow, I'll be dead. So I'm already pretty mellow. But oddly enough, that's probably my favorite song on this album, and it's an original. But the success of this album led to him getting further record contracts, making further songs, making other tours, and his career just steamrolled after this album. As far as the cover goes, that is something I wanted to. Is this? See, that's different. One thing I miss about records, if you can see the image here of this guy laying in a filthy bedroom fantasizing about being a rock and roll star. I used to have the vinyl album, and the vinyl album had on the back side of it a reversed picture, him being on stage as a rock and roll star, fantasizing about being the kid in his filthy bedroom. You don't get that stuff in CDs, and you don't get that stuff in digital media. They chose the cover artist because it looks a lot like a Mad Magazine picture, and that's true. But also, like, a lot of the imagery here comes from his songs. Everything that's mentioned in his songs you can find on the album cover somewhere, for the most part. From, a bucket of Rocky Road ice cream, there's a picture of Joan Jett, a poster of Joan Jett on the wall. Just all kinds of stuff. It's filthy, as in, food all over the floor and stuff. There's a birthday hat, a bus packed full of people. But it's the kind of cover you can look at for a while and find other things. There's a guy in an iron lung tucked in the corner. So you can stare. It's one of those images you can stare at for a while and just find new things all the time. One more comment I wanted to make about Weird Al being a novelty act and then disappearing into obscurity after one album. While it seems ludicrous to say that about Weird Al now, because he's had such a long career, he's put out over a dozen albums. I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's at least a dozen. It might be as many as 15. You know, after such a long, decades-long career, massively successful career, to think that he would just disappear after a single album seems ludicrous. But how many other novelty artists can you name? Now, I can name half a dozen at least, probably 7 or 8 if I really thought about it. But I'm a nerd and I collect stuff like this. You know, I can name some people who have had long careers in music and had success, but that doesn't mean they reached mainstream success. Like Weird Al is, you know, a household name. You know, I could name Spike Jones, Alan Sherman, Tom Lehrer, Arrogant Birds, Bob Rivers, Rucka Rucka Ali. There's 6 right there. So, like I said, I can name performers who have written a lot of comedy music and who've put out multiple albums and had fairly long careers. But most of them aren't mainstream. Most of those names you're not going to know unless you're a nerd like me who likes to listen to this kind of music. Weird Al is the only one that was actually hit, one of the few who's actually hit mainstream in recent memory and actually succeeded and become a household name. I mean, Spike Jones back in the day, I'm not remember sure, but he used to have his own TV shows. Spike Jones was well known in his day. Bob Rivers had his own radio show, so he could promote his own music. Some of his stuff got better known, but he's also, you know, who else but nerds like me could name those artists? Weird Al, another little anecdote. Weird Al is the performer, the artist whom I have seen the most in person. The second number 2 is James Taylor, but I've seen Weird Al live in concert more than any other artist. And I don't go to concerts very often either. I've gone like 2 or 3 times on my own, and I've had a couple people buy me tickets for like birthdays and stuff. And he's only beaten James Taylor by 1 concert. So not by that much. But yeah, those are the only 2 artists I've seen multiple times, really, that I can think of. So Weird Al has a very strong place in my heart. I've loved his music since I first heard My Bologna on WBLM out of Portland, Maine. Well, it was out of Lewiston, Auburn, Maine at the time when that happened. So I love Weird Al Yankovic more than I love Rocky Road. It's his debut album. It's a good, solid start to a decades-long career. As always, my stuff is crap. As always, thanks for watching. And until next time, good hunting.